Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today to learn about the many uses of AI. I'm Mike McQueen, virtual CIO of Virtual IT. We've been pretty excited about this one because we've seen a mixture of intrigue and timidity from people when it comes to using AI. Because of that, we wanted to make this as basic as possible and answer some simple questions for everybody, like how do I access it? What can I do with it? And how do I know that information I'm getting back is an accurate response? So we'll be specifically covering the free version of Microsoft Copilot today, but a lot of this information is also relevant to the other options out there like ChatGPT or Gemini. Once we get through the basics, we'll also take a little bit of time and show you some of what you can do with the paid version of Copilot, so stick around for that. For those of you that have been part of our previous webinars, you'll recognize the voices from Knowledge Wave. They've been an amazing resource when it comes to providing training on any and all of the Microsoft tools available to you. If you get through all of our webinars and want to learn more, I highly recommend that you go check them out. But enough of me blathering. We want to take a lot of time and cover all of the things that we can to make sure that we have a little leftover time to answer any questions that you might have. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to John to walk us through some of the ways that we can use Copilot. And just as a good way to kick us off, John, right before we started this webinar, you actually had an interesting use for Copilot.
Well, I think that might have been me. This is Dan from Knowledge Wave. Right online, I was responding to a quick email and I kind of referenced Christmas. So I used Copilot and I'm like, how many days till Christmas? Boom. For everybody that's wondering, it's 165 days until Christmas.
Excellent. Well, yeah, John, we'll let you go ahead and jump right in.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And Dan, I love that you use that. It took about 10 seconds for you to figure that out. So it's way better than Googling stuff for sure. But thank you for the introduction. Hopefully everybody can hear me. We are very excited to talk about Microsoft Copilot today. And one thing that's a little bit extra exciting about this session is that we're doing an introduction to Microsoft Copilot, but we're also going to talk about all the things you can do for free, which is cool. And then, as mentioned, we'll go into some of the paid stuff, and I'll even talk a little bit about the differences between, for example, the free one versus the individual purchased one versus the group one, and then there's an enterprise one. So there are a few different licenses, and it can sometimes be a little bit confusing with something like Teams Premium, for example, because I want to be able to show you some of the things that you can do with the paid version. So what I've done is actually logged in as into the Edge browser, and I did not sign in, rather. I launched it, but I didn't sign in, just to kind of show you can do this without really signing in. Unless,
John, we're seeing just the intro slide, just a heads up.
Oh yeah, we haven't gotten there yet. Here we go. We've got a lot to talk about, but we definitely want to show off a variety of different ways that you can actually start using it. And it doesn't have to cost money, but if you do spend money, you get a lot out of it. So we'll go into things like, what is Copilot? How does it work? As in, how is AI relevant today? Why would you want to use this? What's the benefit? We'll talk about Microsoft Copilot specifically and its connection to AI. Of course, what you can use for free that I was getting very excited about. How do I access it? That's a good question. There are a few different ways that you can do it. The Bing homepage. Bing is Microsoft's search engine, so it'll be like Google for Microsoft. Bing through Microsoft Edge, because the browser has that capability. And then if you have Windows 11, there's also some app integration. So really, you're going to see Copilot pretty much everywhere. You're going to see that symbol. Sometimes it's in different colors because there is a version of Copilot available for different apps that you have across Microsoft 365. So it's completely free. Ask, as Dan mentioned, how many days until Christmas, or generate images, or have it help you write an RFP for free. There are so many cool things. And I recommend using the Edge browser for this and then using the Bing homepage. You might have Windows 10. That's okay. There are plenty of other opportunities to use it. We're going to talk about some of the Copilot prompts as well, because that's really That's the secret sauce to this. Knowing how to properly ask. Some people are better at Googling things than others, and we get millions and millions of results. Billions sometimes when we Google things. Now you're going to notice that AI is built more and more into search engines. Today we're going to talk about Bing because it's so, CoPilot is so well placed there. But there are a variety of different things that you can ask. You could just ask any question that you can think of. And sometimes it's entertaining just to learn about a topic. You can challenge it because it's not always correct. Keep that in mind too. But we all know that when we Google things, that's not always correct either. So if we know that, a lot of times I use CoPilot to even research something that I already pretty well versed in, but I like to look at different angles and even get some sources. So if you want to learn a new topic, it can be a lot of fun. You can also have it on your phone. You get more out of it though when you log in using a Microsoft account. So that could be your work account if it's Microsoft, but it would be the personal side, and that counts. You don't have to log in with the work or school. You can actually associate that with a personal. Or you could have an Outlook.com or Hotmail or Live.com, any of the Microsoft ones, and that'll work. That allows you to do all kinds of cool things like language translation, help with coding, very fancy, writing assistance. If you spend time using things like Grammarly, you can use CoPilot for almost all of your writing assistance, and you get all of these different features, ways that you can have it presented, and you can even change your mind. So it is a chat. It's like ChatGPT, but it's Microsoft, and it uses different techniques. And we have security if it's business related, but we also will see sources. It will tell you where it's getting that from, which is also really helpful. You can also create images. CoPilot has a part of it called Designer, which is really cool to play with. I made some very fun images with pets. And also you can create custom images. Maybe if you have a safety training coming up and you want to do a class on hand washing or something, you can create pretty cool images for free that you could put in your PowerPoint, for example. There's also news updates, weather updates, setting reminders, lots and lots of cool things that we can do. We're also going to go in, as I mentioned, the art of the prompt. Learn to ask a certain way to get amazing results. Think of it like that. And then best practices. We do have Q&A as well, so please feel free to use that question panel, which you should see. Even if you'd like to say hi, tell us where you're from, that's always fun. This is live. It's meant to be interactive, so please use that. Also, I got a little excited about using CoPilot on your phone. You can do that. If you'd like to give it a try, you can scan this with your phone camera and install that. That's something I did, and I had a lot of fun with it. I encourage you to do the same. We can also include this after if you're fumbling for your phone. Before we get started, though, I am curious. Let's do, if you don't mind, a quick poll. Now, that QR code was up quickly, but let's try this one. Have you ever used CoPilot? There are several people on this one. This is really well attended, so that's exciting. You may or may not be able to participate in this poll, but you can also, if you're not able to, you can type in the question panel if you've ever used CoPilot, and you could also type in here if you needed to. But what I'm curious to find out is, have you ever tried any of the free things? Sometimes it can feel a little bit intimidating, like, oh, there's this new AI, artificial intelligence thing that's showing up everywhere. How do I use it? What do I do? So I'm going to refresh this page. It's okay if you don't participate. Again, you can just type in that question panel. But I think this is what my guess is, that a lot of people have seen it because it does pop up. It's a standalone thing. So CoPilot and I got in a bit of a disagreement or argument, let's say, because I was trying to tell it that it is integrated with Microsoft 365 apps. And it's telling me, no, I'm not integrated. I'm standalone. I'm just there and I'm available. So I guess it's just working with words on that. But I think it's integrated. CoPilot doesn't want to say it's integrated. It says, well, no, I'm standalone, but I happen to pop up in a variety of different places and I'm available. What can I do to help? Oh, okay. So that's my take on it. Now, we've got a lot of people are saying, yes, they've used it before. A few people are saying no, which is kind of what I expected. Although the people attending this call are interested, obviously, so you may have explored a little bit. Now, we are not going to get into the deep dive. This is an introduction, but I want to kind of put this out there that it is using artificial intelligence. CoPilot is a brand name for what Microsoft is creating with this, and it uses all sorts of different hidden layers where it's grabbing information depending on the level of your license from Microsoft 365 apps, from Microsoft Graph, from a large language model, so an LLM. That's where it gets the information so that we can have a human-like conversation with it. The chatting aspect is probably one of the most helpful parts of it because it may find some information for you and maybe you're not clear on it or it doesn't make sense. You can ask, you can be really persistent. You can say, can you tell me like I'm a beginner? Can you tell me like I'm a pro? Can you put it in a story for me? You really can do whatever you want. But what happens is we use these 4 things when we ask something. We have a query or we use a prompt to ask a question. Then there are 4 things which we're going to go over: goal, context, expectations, source. Well, it takes all of those things and it mimics a human brain. We've got different layers of information. We're extracting important things. Maybe I have a meeting with Mark. It's coming up. I may ask CoPilot to check my emails and Teams chats to find information about Mark, what I'm working with him on. And then computations are happening really quickly. It's reaching out, it's making sure it's secure, pulling that information. And then the output layer, that's what it says. That's just going to be a very nice, clean, maybe a summarized list of key points. And that can help me prepare for the meeting. This saves a lot of time. It really does provide a big way to save time. Somebody's asking a question about, can I put the QR code back up? I can do that. So what we're going to do today is go through several different examples, different ways that you can customize your experience, because we're going to start with the free ones and we're going to talk about all the different things that you can do with it. So again, we'll include the QR code after. And you can also search your app store. Just search for CoPilot. It's going to come right up. One thing that CoPilot can do is synthesize data from lots of different sources. So what it searches for, now whether this is on a website or it's work files, it's your Outlook messages, any meetings you had, files you're working on, it can help you find info that's sometimes buried. So that's a consideration for some organizations. Like, we have years and years and years of files and they're all accessible from the CoPilot perspective. So sometimes it'll bring up old data. It's something to think about. You can fine tune that and you can ask it specific questions, but it's quite an experience to get started with it because you can ask work related questions. We're going to talk about prompts and then I'll certainly give some demo, but you can put a little or a lot into a prompt. You may ask it, write a summary of all emails from Dan in the past 2 weeks. I've done this before. I could also say, draft an outline of a training manual about time management. Our audience is professionals who work in a hybrid environment and constantly need to attend virtual meetings. You can put a lot into this. And meet deadlines. The tone of the document will be friendly and suggestive. That's cool. If you want to be specific, add those parts. And sometimes it will give you results you don't love. You're like thinking, oh, this isn't really what I want. This isn't helpful. CoPilot's not going to work for me. Well, consider changing the way that you ask. And there are 4 parts. So when we say a CoPilot prompt, a prompt is just the instructions or questions that you'd use to tell CoPilot what you want. And they can include 4 different parts. There's a goal. And I guess this is like also with people too. If you really want to know the information, what do you want from CoPilot? Then give some context. Why do you need it? Who's involved? What are your expectations? So how should CoPilot respond to best fulfill that request? Should it be formal, informal? Is the audience new to the topic? And what's the source? That's a big one too. What information or samples do you want CoPilot to use? So an example of a goal might be, I want a list of 3 to 5 bullet points to prepare me for what? Well, for an upcoming meeting with this client, and you can do this with the free one, by the way, focusing on their current state, what they're looking to achieve. You can also copy paste things into an email, for example. Copy paste that into the CoPilot field and ask it to summarize it for you. So giving that context is really helpful. What are the expectations? Well, I want the tone to be friendly but authoritative. Okay, and what's the source? Focus on emails and Teams chats that we've had over the past 2 weeks. That's going to get a completely different result than if you just said, come up with bullet points for a client meeting. You're going to get all sorts of things. Sometimes I forget to give the right context or expectations, and it doesn't really work exactly for me. This is an example of having what's required really is a clear goal. So this is an example of creating content. So using generative AI, artificial intelligence, to actually create something from a large model that mimics the human brain. So it feels like you're talking to a really smart person sometimes. But what this does, here's an example in Microsoft Word, even within the Teams environment. You want to put together this proposal and you want to use this product roadmap Word document, and you've got a OneNote notebook with some meeting notes, and then it comes up with an iteration. And you can create several other iterations that are going to work for you and for your team better. So remember, it's AI-powered productivity. So think this is like a personal assistant. And you can do all sorts of different tasks, from using the Edge browser or using Bing to using Microsoft 365 apps. So a lot of times it's going to be basic things like writing an email, coming up with a presentation, really just helping you prepare. I commented before, sometimes I'll use CoPilot on something I already know about because I just want to get that perspective. Or maybe I'll pick up something I didn't know. It also helps make other good connections, which is helpful. So back to basics. What is AI? Well, it stands for artificial intelligence. It's a field of computer science. And what it does is we use it to create systems, different software, different things like this, image creation that can perform tasks that normally require human intelligence and skills. That's the big distinction. Usually these would be things that humans have to do. We've always had that clear boundary between them. Not so much anymore. We see it everywhere. Why is it relevant? Well, we can use it to solve all sorts of different complex problems. It's great for automation if there are tedious or repetitive tasks. It can enhance some of our own capabilities. Sometimes you see it even used in medical environments, first responders. Now, certainly they're going to override the suggestions of AI with their own knowledge, hopefully, but that's something that exists. The idea is it can improve the quality of life. So there are some things to think about, like ethics and use, that might be important. Something you can certainly just ask CoPilot about. You can ask CoPilot, tell me about yourself. And what about ethics? What about this? Am I safe? Ask it. If you want to learn more, don't be afraid. It doesn't make fun of you or anything. It's actually very supportive. Now this, if we get out of the free one and we go more into the paid one, this is what it looks like. We're not going to spend a lot of time. This is just like a little peek behind the curtain. This is the architecture of it, what CoPilot does. It uses, and the reason I'm showing you this is it uses the prompt, and you can actually see these are numbered. We put in our prompt, we send that user prompt. And then from there, we have all this pre-processing, which uses something that's called grounding. And then it processes again, and it reaches out for context using Microsoft Graph. So we don't have to think about all this. We just type in our prompt and it does it. But it reaches out to this LLM so that it can feel like we're talking to a human, and it can also organize. Now that's just a massive network of information, kind of like our brain. Also, we're checking for compliance, making sure it's secure, things like that. Those are all important considerations which have been considered. Here's some examples just of, we're seeing AI everywhere. We're seeing generative AI. We have things like, if you use Spotify, a lot of people use Spotify. Spotify premium users can turn any idea they have, just put it in, and you have this thing called DJ. It'll come up with AI playlists. Amazon's rolling out this generative AI shopping assistant, so you can just chat. It gives you information. But this is cool. So check out. You're going to see this everywhere. I mean, whether it's Facebook, you're shopping on Amazon, you're listening to music on Spotify, it's not always work stuff. But some organizations will create this type of thing for their organization, like a chatbot. So some things to think about, helpful hints to keep in mind. Know the limitations. It's a work in progress. You're going to see a couple times, using an older version, using a newer version like GPT-3 or 4, and limitations. They're usually presented to you. It will tell you. It will say you can't go any further until you agree to these terms, or you've got to sign in to generate that image. That's a little fancier. Things like that. Using quotation marks, being polite is actually better. I find myself being very polite to CoPilot, just in case. Start fresh, use new topic, because then when I say new topic, it's a button, which you'll see. And starting fresh helps refresh that context. And then things don't get muddied. So if you do that, I think it's going to be a little more helpful for you. Here's one example. This is the free version. You can have your phone in your pocket. This is just like a real life example. You leave work, your car won't start. The battery's dead. You can't remember the order. You want to jumpstart your car. Is it red, black, positive, negative? Which ones do I put on first? Sometimes people forget or don't realize that's even a thing. But if you just use Bing on your phone, or you use the CoPilot app on your phone, what's the order for attaching jumper cables? It goes through the step. It shows videos if you want, and even lets you copy paste that. It's incredibly helpful if you just need something, like you just can't remember what that is. So prompts, we're asking it to do something. And sometimes it's easy, like what order do I do the jumper cables in? And it will figure it out for you based on previous experience as it grows and grows. So prompting is kind of like having a conversation. Plain, clear language is ideal. Maybe you want to learn about a project. You're new to the team. What is Project X? Who are the key stakeholders? Can you write a session abstract for this presentation? This text doesn't look good. Can you make this title case so it looks like the title? Sometimes it's like, do I capitalize the F on 4, or which words do I capitalize? Just ask CoPilot. It'll tell you, which is really helpful and saves you a lot of time too. And you can also just create content. The generative AI part of this is very, very powerful. So that could be something like you have this beautiful document, or you created a manual for something, and you need to make a presentation, or you need to come up with an FAQ section. You don't have to spend time combing through and coming up with that. You can just ask CoPilot. And catching up. I'm double, triple booked sometimes. I'm going to show you some different ways that you can catch up on things to make it easier. So we want to think about these 4 things: the goal, the context, the source, and the expectations. I'm going to give another example here. What response do you want? So generate 3 to 5 bullet points. Why do I need it? Okay, to prepare me for a meeting with this client to discuss this thing in their brand campaign. All right. Well, what source? We want to make sure it's the correct source. We have accurate information. So we might tell it focus on email and Teams chats since June. And then expectations, how do you want them to give us that answer? Use simple language so I can get up to speed quickly. Awesome. Keep the conversation going. And there are some things I'm presenting here. I'm going to show you some examples of these. You can have it write stories. You can have it write poems. You can have it create haikus. Translation is a big part of CoPilot as well, because it gives people a chance to actually be included and understand what the other people are talking about. But short details are ideal. Just some quick tips for better prompts. Make it specific. So summarize this email in 2 bulleted points. Be very direct. I think that that's incredibly helpful to do that. Now we're going to go through for individuals, like free CoPilot. There's a CoPilot Pro for individuals, and that's about $20 a month. $20 per month for Pro versus free. You get some additional capabilities, like having it in your Microsoft 365 apps. That can be really big for people sometimes, for PowerPoints or for Word documents. You can get this for your organization. Now that jumps to $30 a month, and it depends on the licensing. Most of the time, people are going to have an E5 unless it's added on differently. And this is going to be different than Teams Premium. The thing about Teams Premium and CoPilot is there's some crossover. So that gets a little bit confusing sometimes. So I'm going to show you both. You can use CoPilot in Teams. There's a CoPilot button, and there's an instance of CoPilot in there as an app. But maybe you have a recorded meeting. You can do what's called intelligent recap, and that uses AI as part of Teams Premium, so it tells you all about the meeting, what happened. I'll be certain to give you some examples of that. But if you use it for generative AI, you might use CoPilot. That means it's creating something. It's getting creative and actually generating new content based on certain sources. Versus Teams Premium, when you take a meeting and you want it recapped, it literally just takes that meeting. It doesn't create anything new. I mean, certainly it creates a summary, but what that's doing is giving you exactly what you need. I mean, if you have CoPilot, you automatically have that meeting recap capability. But if you have Teams Premium, it does not have the CoPilot creative generative capabilities. So something to consider if people are paying for a Teams Premium license and you love intelligent recap and that's all you want, great. You can actually use some of the free stuff. You get free access to AI. You can use it on your PC, phone, and the web. You can get different plugins and change that AI experience for the free version. You get access to GPT-4, which is ChatGPT technology. And you can also use this turbo one during non-peak times. So it will let you know, though. You don't have to remember any of this. And sometimes it will cut you off. One, it's free. It does use a lot of resources to do this, especially when you're using the designer. So cons to the free one, it doesn't include AI in Office and those Microsoft 365 apps. There can be a wait time, and that makes sense. It's free, prioritizing. And you get a limit of 15 image generation requests per day. That's kind of a lot. I mean, sometimes if you're really focusing on a project, you could easily create 15 and go right through them, but that's good to know. Now, CoPilot Pro has all of the things that we have in the free one. Additionally, we have some of the pros might be priority access to the turbo, even during peak times. Now, I noticed there is a difference in the quality of the response and kind of the depth of it. Also, it does add the AI features to the Office apps, which I love, and it's faster. Sometimes I think you'll notice that CoPilot can be a little bit slower, and it takes a little bit of time to get your answer, but it's worth it. You do get better quality image generation. You have 100 daily boosts for faster image generation. Cons, it's expensive. $20 a month over your organization can add up, but it's possible to just pick a few people and then give them that subscription. Really, there's not a whole lot more if you just want to use CoPilot for creating some content, for learning about topics, and generating a few images. When we say query, that's the question that we type. We're going to talk about Bing and Edge and then the apps. So I just want to make sure this is up. A Bing index page, that's publicly available. That's a website that Bing can scrape and give you information about it. There are non-Bing index pages, and those are maybe a file. It's just not publicly available, but you're seeing it. So there are indexed and non-indexed pages. This can sometimes be a thing for some people. They don't want their data to be available publicly. So that's how CoPilot can tell is indexed or not. I mentioned grounding before. Grounding is basically just ranking the websites and the content in there, and then it gives you a summary of links that it used to get that information so you can click and learn more if you wanted to. So it gives you some answers, but it also gives you some resources, which is nice. So the response, you could get different words in there that mean response, like completion, generation, answer. It depends on how you're using it. And if you're signed in, then you can get a conversation history, which is cool, and also some browsing context. Page information. This is helpful. I like this one. Sometimes you go to a web page and there's just too much stuff on there, like ads, and the recipe is way at the bottom. You got to scroll through everything. Same type of thing. You can ask it to summarize it. So just a few quick tips. We're going to do some demo now, but I really wanted to point out to check the results. Review, revise, that can be a pretty big deal for you. You don't want to look badly because it's giving you completely wrong information. So here we go. I'm going to start in the browser, and you can certainly log into a browser and follow along if you like to interact. But when I go to bing.com, I've opened the Edge browser, and of course we have all this stuff on the bottom, all the news items we don't really want to see. So maybe I'll zoom in a little bit. Bing.com, they changed the look of it completely. We now have this CoPilot icon here, but on just the search page, you can ask CoPilot. You can talk into it, you can search using an image, and you can access CoPilot this way, just by clicking on that icon. Learn more, of course, if you just want to get started. But there are also some examples to help you get started. So here, if I just wanted to search the web, I'm going to just say, how do I write an RFP? It does its normal search, but what it's doing is going to push the things to the top. It does search, but we also have CoPilot right here. It pushes down. It's very kind. Certainly, writing an RFP, and then what it does, it goes through all the steps. We can see little notations here that give us links to other sites that have been ranked higher, like this HubSpot blog that goes through telling us to outline the scope of work, and we've got a lot of cool things in here. Now it does tell us right down here, by continuing your interaction with CoPilot, terms of use privacy statement. I'd encourage you, certainly, check that out because it gives you just some information about the security and the privacy stuff. How protected is the data I input and get back? That's a good question. So I'm not signed in. It's the free version. See, I'm not signed in. We have CoPilot here in Bing, and I've gotten an answer. Now, this one I'm not worried about any security. How do I write an RFP? If I'm going to talk about company-specific things, I would want to be logged in using my business account. It would then be able to tell, and the security is turned on that way. Then you're going to have similar security to SharePoint and things. So it depends. I mean, certainly be aware if you know you're logged in and you pay for it, it's a container. It will stay inside the organization, and it's not going to find data that you don't have permission to. It will only surface appropriate things. But as I mentioned, maybe this RFP, something I want to write. How do I evaluate vendor proposals? Can you provide an example of a well-written RFP? Yes. So I can just click that and go. So here's one for website development. It gives me an intro, tells me all about the scope of work and the different the timeline criteria. This is very quick and easy. You saw how quick that was. Now, on the top of this page, we see CoPilot GPTs. CoPilot's one. Designer is another one. That's where we can get some of those images. But I find this to be incredibly helpful just using Bing. You can search for pretty much anything. If I go back to search, I can search this way. How many planets are there? 8 planets. It gives this stuff right on the top, and I can start typing. but I like clicking CoPilot, and it's going to tell me all about it. Even some of the interesting things that's more modern. Now we can learn more. Look, we can react. We can copy that data. We can export it. And here we have different iterations. I mean, you can always have it rewrite, change the way it's presented, or you can just click new topic. New topic, when we do this, brings us to this really cool carousel. Compose a pop song about an astronaut returning to Earth. Coach me through an upcoming job interview with some mock questions. This is a great way to get started, get you thinking about things. I actually use CoPilot to help figure out my materials list for building a deck. And I started using it for meal planning. You can just tell it what kind of foods you like, and it will actually go through. Now it tells us here we can sign in to ask more. Signing in is still free, but I kind of wanted to start here. Choose a conversation style. This is great. You can do one that's more creative. You can do, and what that's going to do is imaginative, get into some creative things. More balanced. That's going to be everyday informed based chats. And then more precise. This one I like because you can start concisely and then you can find facts and information. It's very precise that way. So if we wanted to go in and start asking questions, we could say things like check my spelling, or how do I create a PowerShell script to import user contact info into their profile. So if you're an IT person and you like using PowerShell, but you're not exactly sure how to do it exactly, and you don't want to spend 3 hours researching it, it's going to tell you. Prepare a CSV. Here are the columns that you should have. Then you can basically copy paste this and make a couple of changes and run it. Now, this really does. I've talked to people who've used this real world example, and it saved them a lot of time. Write a Python script to find the largest number in a column. So it doesn't have to be a certain type of language. You can write HTML, you can have PowerShell. I mean, here's Python example. A lot of people use this. And again, this saves you so much time. So coding help is incredibly helpful. Now, we also talked about things like generative AI. How can we create things? How can we generate new content? And then maybe I can use that. Start with something basic that's interesting. Use some of these, and maybe I could say, how can I use this in Excel? And what that does is it will take the Python script and then it will tell you what function you could use in Excel. You can copy paste tables into this and it will create it for you, even tell you certain Python scripts. This is just one example. If you want to learn more about that, it gives you this Microsoft support page that you can then click and it goes to that website. Now this is going to help us move on to using CoPilot instead of Bing, using it in the browser. See, there's the button up on the top. It's a little bit different. It says, hey, see what's possible in CoPilot in Edge. Here, you can generate a page summary. Yes, I'm going to use the more precise one. So it's telling me, sign in to ask more questions. Yes, that's fine. It's using context clues. So what it's doing is taking this website, and if I don't want to read it all, sometimes that happens. You don't want to read it all, just have it summarize it for you, because it's going to tell you exactly where to check and where to follow up. I find that to be helpful. Here's one example. I'm at the Salesforce website, and I want it to, I can say summarize this page, please. So it's using salesforce.com, and I'm allowing it to get context cues because I set that up here in the manage settings area. You can manage your settings for CoPilot from the regular settings area up top if you want to. But I like this. Saves me time. I can go see just a little bit about it and then begin asking other, answer from the web instead. This is going to reach out beyond just this page. So start small, scale up if you want to. I think you're going to, again, find yourself saving a ton of time. You can have two types of conversations in this context. You can have a chat, or you can compose. So the chat is more like gathering information, and then compose is more like generating. So that's the generative AI portion of it. And look, you can learn more from these things. I love it. So here we have compose. This is where we can get very specific. And I like this because we can write about something. So say, write an email to congratulate my colleague Dave on his new book. It doesn't matter if there are typos, by the way. It will figure it out for you, but I'm going to fix that. So what's my tone? I want to write this email. I can't think of how to get started. Professional, casual, enthusiastic, informational, funny. I can type in an emotion and say, I want this to be enthusiastic. I want it to be an email. We could just have it write a blog about it. And I'm going to have it medium. So I'm going to generate a draft. And it doesn't matter what website you're on for this, by the way, because it's a flyout panel on the side. But check this out. It gives me this preview. Just a medium length thing. Warm regards. It does this whole thing. You can copy it, or if you don't like it, you can regenerate it. Don't be afraid to regenerate it or say, can you make it sound like this? The chat one is sometimes helpful for this as well, because you can generate all sorts of things from this email. So say, just take that. And I'm just going to go paste this in here. I'm going to say, can you write this in the style of Dr. Seuss? And I'm going to paste it in there and press enter. What this is doing is using the web, because I don't really have context for Dr. Seuss style of writing. And it literally goes in, the places you'll go with your book now complete. And it's really, really funny, actually. This is helpful for meetings when you just, maybe not Dr. Seuss, but you can give some fun context, still have it be correct. You can translate it. I can say, make it in German. And what this does is uses some of the translation capabilities. So what I'm doing here is trying to show you, in the presentation before, I showed all the different things that you can do, different types of questions that you can ask. And these are all prompts that this is free. So now it's putting it in German for me, if that's Dave's language, let's say. I love it. Curious if anybody's used that before. Now, what I'm going to do is close that, and we are going to go to copilot.microsoft.com. And what this does, I like this interface. What this does is it gives us this conversation style choice, and you can ask anything. You can upload images and have it use that image. You can say, can you describe this image for me? What is this? I'm going to sign in now, and you get a choice with a personal account or a work or school account. Now, I'm going to sign in with my work or school one to show you some of the capabilities of that. And that's going to give us, I'm sure we'll allow that, a work version or a web version. Now, this is going to be help me prepare for the meeting, generate some ideas, start a conversation, don't miss out. I love it. This allows us to go in and it'll reach out, check my emails for messages from Dan, and give me a recap. What that does, it's going to go look, find things that might be relevant. Just for, like this morning, Dan mentioned that I should, reminding me just some of the things we're going to talk about today. Dan forwarded me some updates on things. This is really helpful if I know I've got this other meeting coming up or something. Now, when you're in here, you can see that I'm signed in. You can create a new chat, and you can also check out your previous chats that you might have here. I've used this for a lot of different things. Why am I getting a blocked error? Why, please recap conversations I had between this person, Ted. I've deleted that. But this is reaching out using Microsoft Graph to all of the things that I have for work. Now, it also shows up in work in lots of other places too. You're going to see it in Outlook, in Teams. So for example, I go to Teams. This is an example of using AI for a meeting. We had a meeting to meet with David, and he was experimenting with some AI voices for generative AI. And what happened was I went to the meeting. Here it is, review David's processes. We have the meeting chat, we have files, details, but there's meeting recap. Now, this is something you can get with Teams Premium, but it's also something you can get with CoPilot. So think about that. What this is doing is showing us where David is speaking, where Dan chimed in, where I did. Dave Deese didn't say too much, but he's there. And then we can click and see exactly what that person said. This is a great way to catch up on meetings. It gives us a transcript, and then we can start asking it questions if we want to. There's a CoPilot button, and there's an Open and Stream button. So CoPilot is going to show up everywhere. Pops out to the side. Ask me anything about this meeting. What is the takeaway? Now this is generating a response. And we always have this choice here to get additional prompts if we want to. So what this does, it quickly combs the entire meeting and tells me some of the things. David shared his process. He showed us how to import audio, explain how to adjust the pronunciation of words. We can see there are so many different things. I mentioned this new app. This is great. So we find this to be helpful because, again, I get double booked a lot, and having that meeting recap is incredibly helpful. Just make sure you have a transcript for the meeting. I know we're wrapping up, and if people have other questions, it would be a great thing to check in on. But here's another example of something that you could do. Go to Stream, which is where your meetings are, and here you can see we're in there, we're chatting, but I can have it recap the meeting this way using CoPilot. So if you don't have Teams Premium, you don't see that recap button, launch the meeting and say, well, list the action items. So if I do that, this is telling me my browser settings are not allowing querying. Right? So this means that I need to go into my browser settings sometimes and just allow certain cookies from certain places. I want to kind of let you know sometimes you may need to go in and do some setting changes. If you go into settings, you're going to see cookies and site permission. This is saying this is allowed, but you can modify this a little bit. So ask, allow, or look, this was blocking. So you might want to take some time and go through and just see. I know some people were concerned about the security stuff, but site permissions, that's going to be the main place to do that. All right. We do have something that we can attach and provide for you, which is the things that I was talking about with the art and science of prompting. So this
Don, I dropped that in the meeting chat. So if people want to scroll through there, there's a link where they can actually click and download it. For sometimes they didn't show up in the actual interface for GoToWebinar, but there is a link for folks in the chat.
Gotcha. Cool. I appreciate that. Let me see here. Lastly, I just want to show here in Teams, I was getting excited and saying, hey, go to your calendar and find a meeting, and then you can actually get a recap if you have it. Another thing is you're going to see the CoPilot app here in Teams. So what this does is lets me go and do all sorts of different things. I can add people and files and meetings, emails for context. As I go through here, I can say, okay, there's Charlie. What am I working on with Charlie? And what this will do is generate, look for those Teams chats and the meetings, documents that Charlie and I are using together. So this is pretty slick. When you pay, you have the subscription for $30 a month, you can actually use it in every app you have. That's Microsoft. It's telling me some of the things. We're working on some YouTube stuff, and it even tells me you reacted to a message. So again, more examples of just using Teams for that one place to get all your stuff, because CoPilot is so in that. So I'm going to go to web, and I'm going to end with something I think is kind of cool, creating images. So here, I'm going to go to the more creative. I'm going to say create an image of people in an office logging on to their computers. They should be happy and enthusiastic. What this is going to do is use Designer, which is built in, and you get 4 right off, and you get credits. So these are the boosts I was talking about before. Just to give a little context on that little coin, that means you get 100 and it'll boost, and it'll create these for you. So check it out. It does not do great with hands and fingers and things. Sometimes people have 6 fingers. This is the first iteration of it, and sometimes you may want to do one that's more of a cartoon. This might be something you paste into a PowerPoint, for example, and that can be really helpful. So ask it, add some plans to the office, build on it. Remember, it's a conversation that you're having with a computer that's designed to be like a human. So sometimes it gets kind of interesting, but push it a little bit. That's my recommendation. Try it out, and if it doesn't work, it's going to tell you. There are a variety of different ways that you can do it. This looks pretty good. I like it. This might be something I have on one of my slides. And I didn't have to go license images. These are all things that we've been able to do for free. So hopefully this was helpful. We've got additional questions, and Dan, maybe if you want to chime in if people ask something I missed.
I answered questions as they came along. A lot of them are just kind of direct back to the person. I think there might have been one that I pushed out to the audience, but you gave some great examples. I just wanted to share a couple ways I use CoPilot. Within CoPilot, within Teams, oftentimes towards the end of the week, Friday, I'm like, what's my schedule look like, or what's my calendar look like for next week? And it'll give me a summary for the full week with links to various things, meetings and appointments. So I find that very helpful. I love it to get started on content we're creating. We design a lot of course and curriculums. We can use it as a base, yet we still have to be able to go back and put our personal touch on it, right? You can't just default and use that. So CoPilot's not replacing people, right?
Absolutely.
And another thing, oftentimes when we're creating content and using CoPilot within applications, Word primarily for me, I may just highlight a block, a paragraph, or a few sentences and ask CoPilot to reword that. And it'll give you 3 different examples, and you can kind of scroll through them. And if you want to, you can replace that. I think the GIF image that you have on there now is illustrating that. So
yeah, the one I showed before was your example of the meeting, or just what do I have Monday? What can I expect when I come in the office on Monday? And then Dan's other example, here in Word, I highlighted this paragraph and the little CoPilot icon shows up, and I just said rewrite. So what this does is generates new content, and it gives me a few different ways that I can pick that. We're going to see those CoPilot icons everywhere.
Thank you, John. I don't know if anyone saw on the screen, but John is booked for a 2 to 3 o'clock today's session and a 3 to 4 o'clock session. So we're going to let him skip off to that session. I will stick around for some additional questions if you have them. There is a lot to CoPilot. It's an elephant. We have some learning content that we're producing that's on using CoPilot in Word, using it in Excel. I just recently started working within OneNote. So one thing that's consistent across Office 365 is change. For the most part, that's usually pretty good. I do want to thank everybody for attending today.